I was sitting across from a woman who was showing me a mock-up of my own wedding cake, and on that cake, I was not me. My name is Adam Kane. In 11 days, I had a wedding. My fiancée, Alyssa Hale, had been stuck at work every single time for 6 weeks whenever we needed to drive to the florist, taste the menu, approve the seating chart, and I, like an idiot, went alone. Monday morning, the planner, a sweet girl named Sydney, unfolded an iPad in front of me and smiled the way people smile when they don't yet realize they're about to break someone's life. Ready to look at the cake mock-up, Mr. Kane? I nodded. On the screen stood 2 sugar figures. The bride, Alyssa, blonde hair, white dress. I'd know her by silhouette. The groom, a red-haired guy in glasses. Theo Varennes. I knew that face better than my own, because in my previous life, it had leaned over me 2 hours before I stepped off the roof of Hale Tower. Back then it said, "Sorry man, nothing personal, just business." Now it was standing on my cake. Sydney followed my gaze and slowly went pale. The pink on her cheeks drained into her neck and stopped there in 2 uneven patches. She swiped further. Invitations hymn. Thick cream cardstock, gold edges, the kind of paper that costs $4 a sheet. And on each one, Theo Varennes cordially invites you. Seating chart, him, his name at the head table where mine should have been. His family name in the row reserved for the groom's parents. Honeymoon in Hokkaido. Him, the Aman Niseko, 2 weeks, deposit paid from Alyssa's personal card, the receipts attached as PDFs. Sydney was now swiping past as fast as her thumb could move. Everywhere Adam Kane should have been, Theo Varennes stood. Even the dietary preference column for the groom read, "No shellfish." Theo was allergic to shellfish. I'd eaten shrimp at my own engagement dinner. This is Mr. Kane, isn't it? She got out. Ms. Hale confirmed everything last month. The 16th. In person, she came in with her mother. They were here for an hour and a half. They tasted the cakes. Ms. Hale said the red velvet. Her mother said the lemon. They settled on the lemon. She signed the contract herself. The 16th. I had driven Alyssa to the hospital. Her head hurt. I held her hand in the corridor for an hour and a half. When the doctor came out, she whispered in my ear, "Thank you for being mine, Adam." I felt something very strange. Not rage, not hurt. Something closer to boredom. You know that feeling when you're watching a rerun and already remember exactly who dies in episode 3? That, Sydney started fussing, saying things like, "Maybe it's a mistake. Let me call. Maybe it's a surprise." I stopped her. "Don't call. Just print all of this for me, please. And the bill. The bill? I paid a deposit. I'm taking the mock-up." She looked at me like she was waiting for me to flip the table. In my previous life, I would have flipped the table, screamed at her, the florist, the security guard, driven to Alyssa's office on the 42nd floor, made a scene, and within 2 hours, the whole city would have known Adam Kane was a weak, dumped dog. In my previous life, I very much wanted to be a victim. That's what killed me. In this one, I paid. Took the printouts in a thick envelope, thanked Sydney, walked out. Seattle, November. Outside, it smelled of wet asphalt and Starbucks coffee. No artistic streams of rain across my face. No theatrically broken breathing. I just walked to my car and thought about one line. An idiot is not the man who's betrayed. An idiot is the man who's betrayed twice. Got in, set the envelope on the passenger seat, started the engine, and only then did I let myself remember who I was. My name is Adam Kane. I'm 27. I'm a third-floor analyst at Pemberton and Vale. Salary $65,000 a year. Suit Macy's on sale. Apartment, 2 rooms on Capitol Hill rent. Fiance Alyssa Hale, only daughter of Marcus Hale, head of Hale Capital, family fortune $2.5 billion. Everyone who knew me thought I was dragging luck around by the tail. A poor analyst marries a princess. Fairy tale. All of it was true, and all of it was true in my previous life too. Only in my previous life the fairy tale lasted 4 years. 4 years I closed my eyes to business trips, to urgent meetings, to the fact that her phone always lay face down. 4 years I sincerely thought I just wasn't worthy enough of her. That I needed to work more, stay quiet more, endure more. In the 4th year, I saw a transfer in her banking app, $5 million into Theo Varennes' account, with the note "Thanks for everything." Same day, I learned that her entire romance with me was part of her mother, Victoria Hale's scheme. Marry the daughter to a quiet nobody, so the quiet nobody could become the face on deals the family was using to launder money. I was a front. A convenient fool. When I figured it out, she just shrugged. "Adam, stop. It's business. You knew you weren't our circle." 3 weeks later, I signed the divorce papers. 2 weeks after that, I learned Theo Varennes was already in my chair at my office. 6 months later, I had no job, no reputation, and not a single dollar to my name. They had all leaked out through Shell family charitable funds I formerly had access to and formally co-signed. A year later, I was on the roof of Hale Tower, the phone in my pocket. On the screen, a voicemail from Lily Hale, Alyssa's younger sister, who had never once spoken to me in all 4 years. Recording sent at 11:14 p.m. I didn't open it. I stepped at 11:17 and opened my eyes 6 months before today's Monday. The morning I woke back into, I lay in my cheap bed on Capitol Hill, looking at the crack in the ceiling I'd memorized and counted. 6 months until the cake tasting. 8 months until Alyssa was going to, I now knew for sure, clean out my accounts through the wedding family fund. A year until Hale Tower. And most importantly, I remembered everything. Every trade, every market crash, every IPO of the next 8 years. Who buys Pinterest when Bitcoin falls in March? Which pharma company pulls a drug in April? Which Seattle startup turns into a unicorn by 2029? I didn't spend those 6 months crying. I opened a brokerage account in Singapore through a lawyer I knew. In my previous life, that lawyer would have saved my life if I'd gone to him. I didn't. Funded it with $3,000. Everything I had. 6 weeks later, $50,000, a crypto trade I remembered by date and hour. 3 months later, $2 million, a short on Lentivax Pharma, drug recall September 11th. I placed it the evening of the 10th. 5 months in, $20 million. Now Monday morning of the cake tasting day, my Singapore account held $84 million. No one knew. Alyssa didn't know. Her mother especially didn't know. My boss on the 3rd floor thought I was still dreaming about a senior analyst bump. $65,000 salary, suits on sale, Capitol Hill rent. All of it was set dressing. I kept it on purpose. In my previous life, they had underestimated me because I was what I looked like. In this one, I was what I looked like by choice. Different things. I drove home from the planners. On the way, my phone rang. Alyssa. I didn't pick up. A minute later again. Didn't pick up. A minute later again. By the time I parked at my building, 14 missed calls from her and 1 from her mother. I opened messages and wrote Alyssa one line. Take Hokkaido for yourself. I'm not canceling the booking. Sent. Blocked her number for now. Went upstairs, threw the envelope on the table, opened the fridge, took out the chicken and rice I'd cooked myself on Sunday, and sat down to eat. Clock said 6:30. I didn't cry, didn't call anyone, didn't drink, didn't break a mirror. I ate chicken and rice and listened to the neighbor upstairs running a vacuum. You know, when something dies for the first time, it hurts. When the same thing dies a second time, it's just routine. Alyssa died for me a year ago, in my previous life. The day she said, "You're not our circle." Today's version of Alyssa was just a delayed obituary. I'd already done all the grieving. Now I just had to sort the leftover possessions. 9 o'clock, I went to the gym. Deadlift, 310, like every Monday. Showered, came home. By 1 in the morning, I was almost asleep when I heard footsteps in the hallway. The footsteps stopped at my door. Then, a knock. Not loud, not hysterical. Careful, like someone hoping to be heard, but afraid of waking the neighbors. I didn't get up. Lay there and listened. A minute later, her voice through the door. Quiet, but I knew it. Adam, open up, please. I know you're not asleep. I didn't move. Adam, I'm not leaving. I'll stand here until you open. Internally, I smirked. Stand. Alyssa Hale, who in her entire life had never stood for more than 30 seconds, unless it was a Vogue shoot. Stand, darling. I genuinely want to see how many minutes your willpower lasts. I got up, didn't go to the door, went to the kitchen, turned on the kettle, set out the pot, took down jasmine pearl, Chinese green tea, tight little balls that unfurl in hot water like small jellyfish. In my previous life, this tea had been her first anniversary gift. I had it brought from Shanghai just for you, Adam. 4 years later, I found out her assistant had picked it up at the corner store for $12. I'd kept the tin. Didn't even toss it after the roof. I mean, I couldn't because I was dead. But in my apartment, it stood where it had stood then. I brewed a cup. Sat at the table. Opened the laptop. On screen, my own, memory-reconstructed SEC filing for March of next year. I'd been working on it for 4 months. Details of the Hale Capital insider trading probe that, in my previous life, only surfaced in 2029 when it was already too late. In this life, I was going to leak it in March. 7 years early. Behind the door, her voice again. Adam, Sydney called Mom. She said you saw the mock-up. I can explain everything. There was a contract with an investor. I needed to keep him in the deal, Mom said. We needed to stage the wedding. On paper, for documents, so he'd sign, and then we would have... You don't understand how our family works. Adam, it's complicated. I don't understand. I drank my tea and thought, I understand so well I could write you the script of the next 2 hours, darling. Now you'll move to tears. Then to I love you. Then to you're the only real person in my life. Then if I don't open to a threat to leave. If I still don't open, you'll cry for real. It'll be beautiful. In my previous life, you never once showed me this, because there was never a reason. Now there's a reason, and I finally get to hear what you sound like when you lose control. The tears arrived at minute 22. I clocked it on the wall clock. Adam, I know it's my fault. I know what I did. But we're 3 years in. You can't just say something. Say one word. Say go to hell. Say anything. I thought you'd scream. I came ready for you to scream. And you? Why are you quiet? It's scarier than if you hit me. Alyssa, darling, I'm not going to hit you. I'm not even going to raise my voice. In my previous life, I screamed. In my previous life, I begged. In my previous life, I went to therapy for 3 months trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Turned out I'd done nothing. I'd just been chosen as convenient furniture. You don't scream at furniture when you throw it out. You just carry it away. 40 minutes later, she stood up. I heard the coat rustle, heard her brush something off her knees. Adam, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll keep coming until you open. I know you love me. You always loved more than I did. It doesn't end like this. Yes. It ends exactly like this. You just haven't been notified yet. The footsteps left. I waited 10 minutes. She was capable of coming back and pressing her ear to the door. Then I got up, killed the light, went back to the bedroom. At the threshold, I stepped on something small, switched on the phone flashlight. Earrings. Small, diamond. I'd seen them on her a million times. She'd taken them off at the door and laid them down, so I'd find them in the morning and understand she was here. She left a piece of herself. She'll be back. Every move on the chessboard. I knew it by heart. I picked up the earrings with 2 fingers, the way you pick up a dead fly, and walked to the kitchen. Opened the trash, dropped them, put coffee grounds and yesterday's pizza wrapper on top, closed the lid, washed my hands, went to bed. Slept 8 hours, no dreams. Tuesday morning, I did 3 things. 1, called my boss and took the day, said I was under the weather. 2, drove to a coffee shop on 6th Street, ordered an Americano, sat in the corner with a napkin. 3, took out a pen. On the napkin, I wrote 6 names. It wasn't a revenge list. Revenge is too emotional a word. It was a deletion list. Names of people who in my previous life had systematically, in coordination and with pleasure, destroyed me. I wasn't going to fight them anymore. I was going to take them off the chessboard, 1 piece at a time, neatly. First name, Theo Verenz, 29, managing partner at Verenz Holdings. In my previous life, Alyssa's future lover, then her partner in Gutting Hale Capital. In this life, the red-haired guy on my cake. Weak spot, a cousin in Barbados through whom Theo was already, this November, trading on inside information. I knew because in my previous life that same cousin had been arrested in 2028 and given testimony. I could make him sit 5 years earlier and drag Theo down with him. Second name, Marcus Hale. 58, head of Hale Capital. In my previous life, my future father-in-law, in this one, my almost father-in-law. Magnanimous, charismatic, adored at golf events. Under that skin, a man who for 4 years gave me embracing fatherly handshakes and simultaneously signed the documents that were going to make me the fall guy for his laundering. Weak spot, the Victoria Hale Charitable Fund, through which, by my count, $40 to $45 million passed every quarter. If those documents landed simultaneously with the SEC, the FBI, and the IRS, Marcus was looking at 12 to 15 years. Third name, Victoria Hale, 52. Marcus's wife, mother of Alyssa and Caroline. Lily was Marcus's daughter from his first marriage, but I'll come back to that. Victoria, in public soft society, runs charity lunches for orphan girls. Everyone I knew in my previous life had underestimated her. Me included. I'd considered her the decoration at the table. She was the architect. Her brain came up with the entire scheme of my marriage. Her hand had been moving Marcus like a puppet for 30 years. Victoria was the most dangerous of them all, which is why I wasn't going to attack her. I was going to let her cut her own throat. Fourth name, Caroline Hale. 34, Alyssa's older sister. Married to an Oregon congressman with a tiny voice and big ambitions. In public, the family face, the smiling blonde in magazines, Forbes 30 under 30 again. Caroline wasn't evil. Caroline was convenient. She'd have slept with my best friend if Victoria had told her it was useful for the family. She had one quality I could use. She was the only Hale who could sense when a ship was sinking. And she got off first. Fifth name, Alyssa. 28. I'm not going to repeat who she was. I already said everything. The sixth name I started writing and crossed out. On top of the crossed out, on a clean spot on the napkin, I wrote one word. Lily Hale, 26. Forensic accountant at a small firm called Norton & Briggs on the 14th floor of a building on 3rd Avenue. Glasses with thin frames. Cardigan, thermos of tea, chestnut hair always pulled back with a clip. In my previous life, I'd seen her maybe 9 times in 4 years at family dinners where she ate in silence and left first. Marcus said about her, "Lily's our quiet little mouse. She's not really one of us," Victoria said. "Lily's from his first marriage. Dear, she doesn't get us." Alyssa never spoke about her at all. I thought it was because Lily was boring. I was an idiot. Lily was the only person in the Hale family who ever wrote me. Once at the start of my relationship with Alyssa, when I was just starting to visit their house. "Adam, you must be very tired. They're always like this. If it gets hard, I'm downstairs in the library." I wrote it off as shy politeness and didn't answer. Twice 2 hours before the roof. I didn't open it. In this life, now, I knew what was in that message. I knew because in my previous life, Lily had kept writing it on paper for years after my death. Her own apology, because she thought she hadn't tried hard enough to save me. I learned that from an old lawyer who saw those papers after her own death in 2034. She died of leukemia at 38, alone, in the same 3rd Avenue apartment. In the message she sent May 16th at 11:14, there were 4 words. "Please, don't. Please no," she knew. Somehow, through something I didn't yet understand, she knew and was trying to stop me, and I didn't hear her. In this life, I folded the napkin, put it in my jacket pocket, paid for the coffee, and walked out of the cafe. Outside, the street lamps were already on. November, Seattle, 6 in the evening. In my pocket lay $84 million and a list of 5 names I was going to wipe off the face of the earth, and 1 name I was going to save. Lily's Saturdays had been the same for 7 years. In my previous life, I didn't know that. In this one, I knew the schedule like I knew tickers. 9 in the morning, she'd leave her condo on Belmont Avenue in a light gray coat. By 10, she'd be at the library, not the central one, the small branch on the Lake Union waterfront. She'd walk in, nod to the librarian, a man named Marcus, a different Marcus, not Hale, elderly, Cuban, English with an accent. Go up to the 2nd floor, sit at a table by the window facing the water. Pull out her laptop, a thermos of tea, and a stack of printouts. Work until 1. At 1, she'd go to the same cafe on the corner for lunch and order the same soup. Be back by 2. Leave for home at 5, every Saturday. 7 years, no exceptions. In my previous life, no Hale had any idea. In my previous life, they didn't even know where Lily lived. Marcus once paid an assistant to deliver some papers to her, and the assistant later complained to me that he hadn't been able to find her. In my previous life, Lily had been a ghost inside her own family. Which is why on Saturday, at 10:10, I sat down across from her at her window table. She looked up, didn't startle, didn't contract, just looked at me over her glasses the way someone looks who has lived undercover for years and calmly expected the cover to blow eventually. There was a yellow legal pad open in front of her, half covered in her handwriting. Small, square, deliberate, the kind of letters a person writes when they're afraid the pen will slip and reveal something. She closed the pad slowly, the way you close a passport at customs. "Adam," she said. Not a question, a statement. "Lily." I set a flash drive on the table. Small, black, cheap, the kind they sell in 3-packs at office supply stores. She looked at it. At me. At it. For a second, her eyes flicked past me, checking the staircase, the librarian's desk, the emergency exit. The triangulation of someone who'd already mapped every room she sat in. "What's this?" "It's a copy of what you've been collecting for 4 years. That's when she froze. Not in her face stayed level. Her hands froze on the keyboard. Between the index and middle finger of her right hand, there was a small callus from holding a pen. She squeezed it, and immediately unsqueezed, as if catching herself doing it. "I don't know what you mean," she said. Voice level? Good voice. I almost respected her for that voice. "Lily, on the drive your own archive, down to the file name, to the folder, to the title. Victoria Grant, 2021, Laos forgery.pdf. Marcus transfer Singapore 8.2 M October 22.xx. Map of shell signatories orphans.x. I'm not making anything up. This is your archive. Just your 4th or 5th external copy. You make a new one every quarter and put it in a safe deposit box because you don't trust the cloud. This is your box number 3. At the bank on Columbia Street, you keep the key under the lining of a brown bag, the one you set down to the left of your chair just now. Want me to tell you what's in boxes 1 and 2? She breathed evenly. That was stronger than any pallor. A person about to be killed doesn't breathe that way naturally. Lily had rehearsed this. Lily had lived in readiness for this conversation for many years. Only she thought the conversation would be with her stepmother. "Where did you get this?" she finally asked. "If I answer, you'll turn me in to the police like a normal person, so I'll answer later. First you decide if you want to talk to me or get up and leave," she thought. A full minute. I counted. You know what I figured out in that minute? That Lily Hale was the only adult in the entire Hale family. Marcus hid behind money. Victoria behind manners. Alyssa behind beauty. Caroline behind a husband. Lily had spent 4 years compiling evidence on her own father in solitude, with no allies and a Saturday cardigan, with a stack of documents, and no one helped her. "That's the loneliest loneliness I can imagine." "You're not FBI," she said. "No. You're not a journalist. No. You're engaged to my sister. I was engaged until Monday." "Since Monday, no." She tilted her head a centimeter. "Not more." That was her equivalent of someone else raising eyebrows. "What happened Monday?" "I found out what you'd known for 3 weeks. That Alyssa is going to marry Theo Varans, and that I, in this operation, am the distraction for the paperwork." She exhaled, very quietly. "I barely heard. I wasn't sure it was still on," she said. "I thought maybe she'd dropped him." She didn't. They have a joint account in Liechtenstein, opened in August. 9,300,000. Initial deposit, 3 million from Theo. 6.3 transferred from one of your father's Shell grants through a Cyprus middleman. The wedding was supposed to legalize handing me formal signing authority on the family wedding fund, after which 3 or 4 large transactions would go out in my name. A year later, I'd be charged with insider trading. Alyssa would cry on camera and file for divorce. "I read your file, Lily. I know this scheme better than you know it because I know how it ends." I went quiet. So did she. "You said wasn't sure," I continued. "So you knew about the wedding and Theo. How?" "I overheard Mom talking to Dad in August. They thought I was in the kitchen." I was in the kitchen, but I hadn't closed the door behind me. Mom said, "Theo will sign once he sees the contract. Adam will go down in a year and we'll bring it all back clean." I went to my room and spent the whole evening thinking about what to do with that. And? Nothing. I did nothing. She looked at her thermos, not at me. "I thought about writing to you. We'd met 4 times and I didn't know how you'd react, and for the first time in the conversation, she lifted her gaze and looked me in the eye. "And I thought you might be in on it. With them. Lily, darling. In my previous life, we didn't meet 4 times. We met 9 times. And every time you sat 2 chairs away from me and I thought you were shy, and you were calculating whether I was part of the apparatus that had cornered you into this life. Sorry, I was very stupid. I wasn't a participant," I said. "I was the target. I figured that out." "I know you did." She looked at the drive again. Long pause. I didn't push. "Why did you come?" she asked. "I can take down your father. I can take down your stepmother. I can take down Alyssa. I can't take you down, because you're not part of the scheme and never were. But I want to take them down in a way that doesn't catch you in the collapse. And for that, I need you to first get out from under the falling structure. Legally, financially, by name. The way I can do that, there's only one. Civil marriage to me. Not a wedding. Not a ceremony. Not a ring. A piece of paper at City Hall. 10 minutes after 6 months. Divorce, if you want. I guarantee you 3 things. A legal shield, you stop being a Hale. You no longer fall under their obligations. $20 million into your own personal account today, so you can disappear if anything goes sideways. And a promise that you'll never again hear your father refer to you as our mouse, because your father won't have a voice in 3 months. I stopped. She looked at me. I couldn't read what was in her head. "You're insane," she said finally. "Possibly. That doesn't cancel the offer." $20 million. Yes. You don't have them. I have 84 in a Singapore account. I'll send you a statement in 10 minutes if you'll agree to so much as a conversation. She slowly took off her glasses. That was the most human gesture in the whole conversation. Without the glasses, her eyes were the color of wet stone. In my previous life, I'd never seen her without glasses. In my previous life, I was blind. "Adam," she said, "I'll believe you about the money. I'll even believe you about the scheme. There's one thing I don't understand. How you know what's in my safe deposit box, and what's in the files, and how you figured out about Dad in one Monday when you didn't notice anything for 4 years. I'd waited for this question. I had 2 answers, the easy, convenient false one, and the true one. I picked the second. The riskiest move I'd made in this life. I know it because I've lived this story once. I died. I was sent back 6 months. I have 8 years of the future in my head, including yours. She put the glasses back on, very slowly. You're waiting for me to believe that. I'm not waiting for anything. I'm telling the truth because you're the only person in this city I can tell it to. You have 3 options. 1, you decide I'm insane and walk away. I won't stop you. 2. You decide I'm a liar and turn me into the family. I'm ready for that. 3. You decide to wait a week and see if my predictions match reality. And if they do, we come back to the City Hall conversation. What predictions? I pulled a folded printout from my inside pocket, set it in front of her, unfolded it. It was a sheet listing 7 events with exact dates. Stock movements, mergers, one little-known Solana crash on November 22nd, the arrest of a minor California politician on November 19th, the pull of a drug, a single news bulletin line on November 24th. All these dates were arriving in the next 2 weeks. All were specific, none from open sources. I know each of these is going to happen, I said. I know it because I've already seen each one happen. In 2 weeks, we meet here again, the same Saturday, and you decide if you believe me or not. She looked at the list a long time, then stood, folded the printout, put it in a pocket, took the drive, put it in the same pocket. Adam, I'm not coming back here in 2 weeks. Inside me, something dropped very unpleasantly. Here we go. I'll come in 1, she continued. Next Saturday, if even one of these dates lands, I'll come and listen. If 2 land, I'll listen seriously. If 3, she paused, then we'll talk about City Hall. She put on her coat, picked up the bag, walked past me toward the stairs. Halfway, she turned. Adam. Yes, your tie pin is crooked. I know, she came over. 2 fingers, adjusted the pin. 1/2 centimeter, no more. Walked back to the stairs, went down. Was gone. I sat at her table another 20 minutes, not moving. Then ordered a cup of vending machine tea from Marcus the librarian. He grumbled that it wasn't allowed on the 2nd floor. Then poured, and drank it looking at the water. On the water sat a duck. On the duck, no, near the duck, a seagull. The seagull was fighting the duck. The duck was losing. I wrote that down in a notebook because for some reason it felt important. Wednesday, November 22nd, 20:31 p.m., Solana fell 38%. Thursday, November 23, in the morning news, a story about the arrest of Alejandro Rema, a member of the San Jose Municipal Council. Friday the 24th, 9:02 a.m., FDA pulled a drug from a small pharma called Halicor, minor, 2 lines in Bloomberg. Saturday, November 25th, 10 past 10, Lily was at her window table. In front of me, a cup of tea. On the table, laptop, open to an empty folder. Folder was titled Adam. 3 for 3, she said instead of hello. I'm aware. Sit. I sat. She turned the laptop toward me. On screen, a spreadsheet file. Clean, with formulas, with cross-references, with color tags. I stared at it for a minute, then another. It was the whole scheme, complete, not just what had been on the drive 2 weeks earlier. Additional moves I hadn't known even from my future life. Names of Victoria's helpers I'd never met, account numbers at 3 banks I hadn't suspected. A network of 28 shell grantee orphanages, real children's homes in Laos, Cambodia, Guatemala, Malawi, and Bangladesh, that the Victoria Hale Fund nominally funded. Of those, 17 existed only on paper. Victoria wasn't laundering through orphans. Victoria was laundering instead of orphans. Money that was supposed to build schools went to a yacht in Monaco. Out of the 17 fake orphanages, in 3 Victoria had personally opened schools at photo ops. There were no schools. There were sets, hired local kids with signs, a photographer from Singapore. I looked at it and felt my fingers go numb. Lily, I said, this is 8 times what I had. I know this is 15 to 18 years for Victoria. I know this is the complete dismantling of Hale Capital. They never recover. I know. Why did you stay silent for 4 years? She looked at me over her glasses. Without irony, without grievance. Just looked at him. When I was 19, I told Dad at dinner that I'd found irregularities in the fund's reports. Innocent. I was a second-year accounting student, and I was just a good one. The next day, Mom drove me to a clinic in Oregon. They said it was observation because of my low weight. I spent 6 weeks there. They let me out after Dad visited, and I told him, in his presence, that I would stop making up nonsense about Daddy's papers. After that, I stayed away from accounting for 3 years. Then I turned 22 and figured if they ever heard another word from me about those papers, they'd put me in that clinic forever. So I collected in silence and waited for someone I could hand it to, with me not in frame. I was quiet for a minute. I could have said something outraged, something about how horrible that was. I said nothing, because I knew she didn't need my outrage. She needed an exit. Lily, I said, I'm handing this to 3 places simultaneously. SEC, IRS, and the office of a district attorney who has an election in 18 months and who'll build a career on this. You don't exist in this handoff. Source anonymous, documents go through a journalist who has never seen you. No one will ever know it came from you. And if they find out, then by then you're already Mrs. Kane. Different passport, your own account. Me, if they try the clinic move again, that conversation ends so fast for them they don't get a chance to blink. She looked at me a long time. This time, she took the glasses off herself. Adam. Yes. Do you understand what you just said? You'll have me. Yes. That's a very dangerous sentence. I know. I don't love you. I don't love you either. Good. Good. She put the glasses back, closed the laptop. When? Monday, 9:40 a.m., Seattle City Hall, civil marriage registration, 3rd floor. Bring your passport. I'll bring mine. 2 witnesses I'll find on the street for $20. 14 minutes later, we walk out husband and wife, and we go to a cafe on 4th Street. You get a croissant, I get an Americano. After that, you decide whether to tell the family, and when. They'll find out when it's already too late? They'll find out when it's already too late, she smirked. Just barely, for the first time. Not even a smile, a quarter of a smirk. 1 second long. I memorized it. Friday, before our Monday, I stopped by the firm. Not mine, Pemberton and Vale, where I worked. Just to wrap things up. I already knew I'd quit by end of month. On the way up to the 3rd floor, I bumped into Devon Park in the hallway. Korean, 24. Skinny, glasses, a sweater that was too big on him. Someone else's sweater, I knew, because in my previous life, Alyssa had once remarked at lunch, "That guy on the 3rd floor always looks like he gets dressed from a donation box." I'd politely laughed back then. In my previous life, Devon Park worked at Pemberton and Vale 2 more years and then left because he couldn't pay for his mother's surgery. She died 18 months later. He, as far as I knew, drank himself out. By 2030, I'd heard nothing about him. In this life, 3 years earlier, in my actual memory, Devon had caught an error in my calculations for a client. A serious error that could have cost me my job and my reputation. He silently fixed it, forwarded me the email titled "Minor Correction," and never told a soul. I hadn't even thanked him properly back then. I just nodded in the hallway and walked off. I didn't remember his name. In my previous life, in this life in the hallway, I stopped him, asked how his mother was. He was surprised we'd never talked, said she was okay, lying at home waiting for surgery. How long had she been waiting? 3 years. How much? 180 in Seattle, plus 50 for recovery. I nodded, said goodbye, drove home. That evening, I transferred from my Singapore account $200,000 through an anonymous secured intermediary to the name of Devon Park's mother, targeted purpose, surgery and rehabilitation. No note, no signature. Just a short cover letter from the intermediary to the notary. Anonymous charitable contribution. Recipient already selected, not for disclosure. I had spent 12 minutes choosing the intermediary, a Geneva law firm whose discretion was 104 years old. I had spent another 45 seconds choosing the amount. The number 200,000 was specific because Devon's mother's surgery was 180 and the rehab was 50. Together that came to 230, but I rounded down to 200 because I didn't want him to look at the gift and feel he could measure the giver. A round number is a stranger. A specific number is a friend who knows too much. I wasn't doing it for Devon. I was doing it for a person who someday would need a quiet helper who didn't ask questions. I knew I'd need one. In a year or 2. And I knew Devon knew how to stay quiet. You can call it an investment. You can call it charity. I don't care what you call it. The main thing was that on Saturday, Devon's mother was in the ICU at Swiss Medical Center, and Devon was sitting in the corridor, and the surgery was in its 4th hour, and a new number had entered his life. One human being who had done something very big and asked for nothing in return. That number would haunt his dreams. That number would hold him. It's not charity. It's a seed. Monday, December 9th, 9:40 a.m. I stood in the corridor of Seattle City Hall on the 3rd floor holding my passport. Lily arrived at 9:41 exactly, wearing the same gray cardigan from the library. She hadn't changed. Good move. This wasn't a wedding. It was an administrative act. She was carrying a paper coffee cup from a place on Cherry Street, half-empty lipstick mark on the rim. Not from lipstick. She didn't wear lipstick. From a chapstick she'd applied that morning and forgotten about. She handed me the cup without explanation. I took it. Drank what was left. Handed it back. She tossed it in the corridor's trash without breaking stride. We did not exchange a word during this entire exchange. It was the most domestic thing we had ever done. I found the witnesses in the 1st floor lobby in 5 minutes. 1, a guy in headphones paid $30 because his shirt read, "I survived 2020 and all I got was this lousy mental health crisis." 2, an older woman with a dog paid $40. The dog got 1 carrot from her bag. The dog was a corgi mix with 1 ear that stuck up and 1 that flopped. The woman's name was Beatrice. She said she was at City Hall to renew her dog's license and that we'd saved her a boring afternoon. The dog had some kind of historical importance for me. I couldn't remember it, but something about the dog was good. I just felt that's the right dog. The clerk looked at us, looked at the passports, looked at the witnesses, asked not one extra question. It was beautiful. Seattle City Hall is the place where no one cares about anyone else. And in that lies its pure beauty. 11 minutes later, 3 minutes faster than I'd promised, we were back in the corridor. I held the marriage certificate. Lily held my passport, picked it up by habit, then handed it back. "Cafe on 4th?" she asked. "On 4th." We walked 9 blocks. In silence. Not the awkward kind, we just had nothing to say in that moment. It was good silence. I didn't remember the last time I'd walked beside a human being in silence without feeling internal noise. At the cafe on 4th, she got an almond croissant and a latte. I got an Americano, sat by the window. Across the street, construction, a jackhammer was working. "When do we tell the family?" Lily asked. "They'll find out when it's already too late." "You already said that." "I know." I liked how it sounded. She smirked the second time in 2 weeks. Same quarter smirk, and gone again. Alyssa started to feel it on day 10. Not right away. At first she thought I was being silent out of hurt. Every 2 days, a message. "Adam, talk to me." "Adam, I know you're angry." "Adam, Mom wants to talk to you." I didn't reply. Blocked her number, then unblocked, kept it for monitoring, not for conversation. Changed the locks on my apartment. Through the same Singapore lawyer who'd opened my account, I drew up a power of attorney for Lily, in case anything happened to me. Transferred $20 million from my Singapore account to her own new HSBC Singapore account, under her maiden name, which was now her married name, but the Hales didn't know yet. Left for 10 days in Singapore. Officially for an Asian markets conference I made up. Told my boss the firm was sending me there, lied. The boss didn't check. Actually met with the private banker, restructured my Singapore portfolio under a holding company called Voss Logistics. Name still empty? Registration mine? By end of 2025, this holding would be buying $400 million in real estate a year. By 2027, the largest private logistics network of port terminals on the West Coast and across Southeast Asia. For now, an empty registration with one director, with one me. On day 9, Alyssa found out I'd rented another apartment through the doorman. The doorman had been paid $200 and instructed, if she came to ask about me, say I had moved out for parts unknown, that I seemed to have a woman. The doorman performed brilliantly. Alyssa texted Victoria. Victoria called Marcus. Marcus called a private investigator. Day 11, the PI found my marriage certificate in the public registry of King County, Washington. It's a public document. 6 minutes of searching. Wife's name, Lily Hale. Victoria learned first. By my sources, she was sitting in the living room of their house in Medina, drinking herbal tea, looked at her phone and choked. It was the only time in her entire life she'd lost composure in solitude. 6 seconds of her life I didn't get to see, but for which I'd have given a lot. She called Lily that same evening. Lily declined. Victoria called again. Declined. Victoria called a third time. Lily picked up, listened for 15 seconds to her mother's darling. "What's happening? Have you lost your mind? We need to discuss this," and hung up. That might have been Lily's most whole act in her 26 years. The next morning, Victoria came to Lily's office. Without me. Norton and Briggs, 14th floor, the small accounting firm where Lily sat in the corner behind a glass partition working with numbers. In my previous life, Victoria Hale had never set foot on the 14th floor of that building. In this one, she arrived in an $18,000 Brunello Cucinelli coat and asked the receptionist to call our little Lily. The receptionist looked at her like a person from another planet. Lily came out. Victoria proposed coffee somewhere proper. Lily said, "My lunch is at 1. I can come down to our cafe in the lobby." They went down, sat. I didn't see it, but Lily showed me the recording. She'd switched on the recorder from second one. Victoria started soft, with warmth. The warmth that works on loveless mothers and orphan aid funds. "Lily, darling, I'm not angry. I'm just worried." "What happened?" "This boy, he's a manipulator, Lily. He used your sister for 4 years. He's mean and calculating. I saw it from the first second I met him, and now he's using you. Is he? Tell me honestly. I'm your mother. I want to understand." Lily was silent. "Darling, I get it. You want someone who'll see you. I know your father and I haven't always been attentive to you. We understand that. Dad is very upset. He cried yesterday. You know, it's the first time he cried in 15 years. Lily was silent. "Lily, if you just wanted attention, we'll give it to you. Come back home. We'll find a way to annul this. It can be annulled. It's only a signature at City Hall. We can make it like it never happened. You'll be a Hale again." Lily was silent. Victoria paused. On the recording, I heard her set down the cup, a thin ceramic sound. Victoria, like everyone of her generation of rich, held a cup with the left hand, the right always free for a gesture or a signature. Now the right rose, I'm guessing, to touch Lily's hand across the table. Lily, darling, I'm not your enemy. I know that inside the family sometimes you felt on the outside. That's true, our fault. Dad's fault, my fault. But we love you. We have always loved you. Dad told me yesterday, if Lily comes back, we'll buy her an apartment in Bellevue. With a water view? She loves the water. That's true, he said it. Lily looked at her hands. I know about Laos, she said. On the recording, you can hear Victoria set down the cup. Not carefully, with a short clack. What, darling? I know about Laos, and about Cambodia, and about Malawi. And that in 3 of them, you were photographed near schools that don't exist. I don't know, Mom. I'm not certain. Maybe I'm wrong. But if you ask me to come home one more time, I'll ask you to explain why the schools in 3 of 17 sites were sets with hired local kids, and one photographer from Singapore named Raja Prasad. Do you remember Raja? You had lunch with him in 2021 in Singapore, at the Marina Bay Hotel. I know because his bill from that lunch was paid on your card, and the statement reads Marina Bay BBQ Buffet, $284. That's a very expensive buffet, Mom, and a very strange one for a meeting with a photographer whom you later paid $150,000 for the job. Silence. That's all I wanted to tell you, Lily continued. If you come here again, or call, or come to Adam, I'm sending these statements to the SEC. Not as blackmail, just because I'll be afraid. I don't want to blackmail anyone. I want to be left alone. If you can leave me alone, leave me alone. If not, everything I just said will happen. Victoria was silent. On the recording, 28 seconds of silence. I replayed them. That's long. Know how long? Longer than the entire wedding vow at Seattle City Hall. Very long for Victoria Hale, who in my previous life had a perfect reply ready inside a second and a half for any unexpected sentence. 28 seconds of Victoria's silence was, for me, music better than all of Beethoven's quartets. Then Victoria said, Lily, I hear you. I'll go. I won't get in your way. I'm just asking one thing. Don't do this. I beg you as a mother begs a daughter. Don't do this. Lily stood. I'm not your daughter, Mom. We both always knew. Dad married you when I was 2. You didn't choose me. I didn't choose you. We endured each other for 24 years. Enough. Goodbye. And left. That evening, Lily showed me the recording at our new apartment on Capitol Hill. I'd rented a 3-bedroom dark wood and big windows. Room for her cardigans and my documents. We sat on the floor by a sofa that didn't have its upholstery yet because delivery was delayed. Lily ate cold gyoza out of a takeout container with the lid bent back like a duck's bill. I listened to the recording on her laptop. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the gyoza, which she'd ordered from a place on Pike, that the cabbie had recommended 5 days earlier when we first moved in. The cabbie had said the only thing worth eating in the neighborhood was Sushi Kashiba and the gyoza place. We'd tried the gyoza place 6 times in 5 days. We'd tried Sushi Kashiba 0 times. Lily said sushi was too theatrical for a Tuesday. I didn't argue when Victoria said Dad cried yesterday. I laughed out loud for the first time that day. Marcus hasn't cried in 15 years, I said. I know. He didn't cry at his sister's funeral in 2019. I know. He wouldn't cry if his own execution was announced on live TV. I know, Lily. Yes, that was the best speech I've heard in my life. She shrugged, got another gyoza. Bit off half. You know what's strangest? She said. I'd been writing that for 10 years. I couldn't say it out loud once. And just now it came out by itself. I don't even remember what I said. I'll remember it for you, I said, word for word. I'll reread it anytime I get sad, from memory. She finished the gyoza, closed the laptop, laid her head against my shoulder for half a second, no more, and straightened immediately as if by accident. As if she'd forgotten she had a shoulder. And I had a shoulder and they were touching without meaning. I didn't acknowledge it. Made an internal note. That wasn't an accident. That was an experiment. Lily, you're no longer not in love with me. You're just not letting yourself notice yet. I'll help you not notice as long as you need. Your eyebrow's crooked, she said. I have just one? Left one. Crooked. Fix it. She fixed it. 1/2 centimeter, no more. Good night, Mrs. Kane, I said. Good night, Mr. Kane, she said. Don't call me Mrs. Kane. That's my name on documents. In life. Lily. Okay, Lily. Okay, Adam. In the morning, I opened the laptop, opened the archive she'd given me, and started assembling 3 packages. One for the SEC, one for the IRS, and one for the office of a California district attorney who in 18 months would run for Senate and who needed a loud case to make himself visible. The DA's name was Caroline Mendoza. No relation to my Caroline Hale, just a coincidence of names. All the better. 9 days later, the first package went out. Theo Varenz sat down in SeaTac Airport at Gate B7 at 5:08 p.m. Pacific Time, the second Thursday in December. I know the time to the minute because I had photos. Not from the news, from a private source. The Bloomberg journalist whose doctor's sister had operated on Devon Park's mother had been working on Theo for 6 weeks. She was good. 41 years old, lived alone in Wallingford, had a cat named Hemingway and a quiet vendetta against finance guys who used Caribbean cousins as frontmen. I'd found her through 3 layers of intermediaries. She didn't know my name and never would. She dug quietly, through the Barbados cousin, through offshore filings, through a WhatsApp thread the cousin had forgotten to delete. The cousin's name was Marcus St. Pierre. 33, lived in Bridgetown above his mother's bakery. Drove a leased Audi he couldn't actually afford, and posted gym selfies twice a week. He'd kept the WhatsApp thread because his ego liked seeing the words, "You're a genius, M" from Theo Varenz in print. I hadn't approached Theo once, hadn't called the SEC myself, hadn't given an interview. Thursday morning, Bloomberg published a piece on page 3 of the markets section. The headline was modest: hedge fund manager probed an offshore insider scheme. Sources. The first paragraph had the words, Theo Varenz. The second had a photo of the red-haired guy in glasses, the same one I'd seen on the cake. The third said the SEC had already been running its investigation for 2 months. That was untrue. The SEC had been running it for 2 days, because my journalist had handed them the file 5 days before her article ran. But Bloomberg likes to write for 2 months. It lends gravitas. By 4 p.m., Theo had a warrant against his departure. By 5, he was booking a flight to San Jose, Costa Rica via Houston through a sham travel agency. By 5:40, he was in the boarding line. By 5:44, he was in handcuffs in a service room at the airport. By 6:40, they had him at the FBI office in Seattle. Alyssa found out through a friend's story. Lindsay, who was driving in from LA, and saw Theo in cuffs at a transfer. Lindsay filmed it, posted it, deleted it 9 minutes later. But by then, 41 people had resaved. Alyssa watched it at 6:07 p.m. At 6:08, she texted Theo, no reply. At 6:11, she called Theo. Phone off. At 6:20, she called her mother and cried. By 6:20, Victoria had been waiting for that call for 2 weeks. Ever since the conversation with Lily in the cafe on the 14th floor, Victoria had been waking up every morning with one thought: who's next? She was waiting for it to be her. When her daughter said, "Help Theo," Victoria exhaled for the first time in 2 weeks. Theo good. Not her. That was a mistake. Victoria didn't know it yet. That same Thursday evening, Alyssa drove to my old Capitol Hill apartment. I hadn't lived there for 6 weeks. On the door hung a lock with a new key and a note from a property agency. Apartment leased. For matters regarding the tenant, call 555-0184. She called. The voice on the other end answered with an accent, introduced himself as Raoul, said he worked for a Hong Kong company that rented the unit for visiting staff. If she wanted to know who was living there, call Hong Kong. Here's the number, the time difference is minus 16 hours. Alyssa hung up. She found me the next day. Not at the office, she went to the office. I hadn't shown up in 2 weeks. Pemberton and Vale had fired me with no regrets. I'd arranged that. She found me through her personal assistant, who found me through my former assistant from the assistant pool, who still went to the same Pilates class with me on Fridays. At 6 p.m. Friday, I came out of the studio and walked to my car. Alyssa was leaning against the hood. In a coat, no tears, very composed. I walked up. She didn't move, I didn't ask her to. Just stopped half a meter away. Adam. Alyssa. I know it was you with Theo. I looked at her. In my previous life, this woman had spoken to me in different voices over 4 years. The "I'm tired, sweetheart" voice, the "Dad asks" voice, the "not now, I'm working" voice. I thought I knew all of them. I was wrong. This was a new one. It sounded like she had, for the first time on my own watch, understood I existed. It was simultaneously flattering and sad. Better late than never, but never better. Alyssa, I'm an analyst on the 3rd floor. Since when do analysts move the SEC? Don't lie to me. I'm not lying, I'm stating. Analysts don't move the SEC. Analysts move Excel sheets. Adam, stop. Stop playing. I know I don't know how, but I know, and Mom knows. She said it was you, and that you and I need to talk. Like human beings. Like human beings is how? Like the way we talked, before you started getting kicked out of apartments through a shell realtor in Hong Kong. I looked at her again. Alyssa, In my previous life, you let me out of all your apartments, with varying degrees of elegance. Sometimes the door slammed, sometimes not. Now you got pushed back from a door, and you're acting like I'm breaking rules that never existed. Alyssa, I have no answer for you. I don't even have a question for you. You and I are strangers who had plans together. The plans were canceled Monday when I saw the cake mock-up. Since then, we have no overlapping interests. You have Theo, but Theo is busy. I have a wife, she's also busy. Nothing intersects. A wife. Lily, as far as I can tell, you're aware. That's when, for the first time in the conversation, her face changed. She didn't go pale, didn't flush. Just something very brief passed across her face. Not anger, not hurt, more like surprise, as if I'd broken a vase she'd thought was bronze. Lily, she repeated. Lily. Why do you need Lily? Why do you need Theo? It's not the same. It's exactly the same. We both married the right person for practical reasons. I just lucked out more. My Lily is at home reading the balance sheet of some pharma company from San Diego, eating gyoza out of a takeout box. Your Theo is in handcuffs in an interrogation room at the Seattle FBI field office, eating nothing. That's the difference, she paused. Adam, you destroyed Theo over a cake mock-up. Alyssa, I didn't destroy Theo over a cake mock-up. Theo destroyed himself with illegal trading through shell parties in Barbados. I just turned on the light in the room where it was visible. You didn't do this on your own. You're not that kind of person. What kind am I? Now she looked at me a long time. I counted. 8 seconds. 10 seconds. At 12, she said, I don't know. I thought I knew. I knew you for 4 years, Adam. I spent more time with you than with my mother. I knew how you tied your tie, how you breathed in your sleep, the scar on your left wrist from a swing set as a kid. I knew all that. And now I'm looking at you and seeing a completely different person. When did it happen? Monday? That wasn't Monday. That's earlier. Alyssa, darling, it happened on the roof of Hale Tower on May 16th, 2031, at 11:17 p.m. You just weren't there. It was only mine. Now it's coming back to you with a 5-year delay. Alyssa, I owe you no explanation. I have no interest in this conversation. I'm going to get in this car now and drive away. If you have anything else to say to me, say it now. If you need money, I won't give it. If you need forgiveness, I don't forgive you. But that doesn't mean I'm holding a grudge. It means I don't care. If you need advice, my advice is leave. Seriously. Leave now out of Seattle. Out of this country. You have a personal account with 800,000 in Switzerland, I know. That'll last 5 years in Lisbon or Chiang Mai. I may not mention your account in my documents if you get on a plane right now, and don't ever come back to Seattle. That's a threat. That's an offer, Adam, Alyssa. You've lost your mind. Possibly, I went. Around her, opened the door, got in, started the engine. She stood by the hood, wasn't moving, I didn't honk, just slowly pulled away. She stepped back half a step. I rolled out of the lot. In the rearview mirror, she stood in the lot, in a coat, not moving, like a monument to herself. That was the last conversation she had with me where she was still hoping for something. From that night on, anything she said wouldn't be hope. It would be checking how much air she had left in her lungs. Marcus Hale was arrested in March. Not December, not January, not February, March, because I wasn't in a hurry. California DA Caroline Mendoza got the package in the first week of December and flew into Seattle with 2 SEC investigators and 2 IRS investigators in early January. They worked quietly. The team set up shop in 2 adjoining suites at the Hyatt downtown, badged in and out under cover names, used a rented conference room in a 3rd building on Stewart Street for their daily 9 a.m. stand-ups. None of them spoke to the local press. None of them made dinner reservations under their real names. Mendoza herself preferred a coffee shop on Olive Way that served Stumptown beans and had 3 booths in the back where you couldn't be seen from the street. All requests ran through Seattle FBI because Hale Capital was Seattle registered, but the Victoria Hale Fund's deals formally went through California, through Victoria's assistant, who lived in Pasadena. That man, Dylan O'Brien, was a gray-haired Irish bookkeeper who had handled the fund's books for 12 years and was tired. When investigators came to him in February, he cried for 6 minutes and then handed everything over. In my previous life, Dylan had a heart attack in 2026 before he could tell anyone. In this one, he cried 6 minutes, gave everything up, and got immunity. In March, on a Friday at 7:40 a.m., 3 cars pulled up to the Hales' house in Medina. Marcus was still drinking coffee. He had on a bathrobe. That was a nice detail, the bathrobe. In my previous life, at the moment of my fall, Marcus Hale had been sitting in this same bathrobe reading the Financial Times, and I knew he'd be reading the Financial Times because he'd read it every morning in the same chair for 30 years. The morning of his arrest, I didn't leave him in the bathrobe. Marcus had time to change, because security gave him 15 minutes to pack. But at the moment of the doorbell ring, he was in the bathrobe. I held exactly that picture in my head, Marcus in a bathrobe opening the door to 3 agents with a warrant. I wasn't present. Didn't need to be. That morning, I was having breakfast with Lily in the kitchen of our new apartment. We'd moved at the start of January into a house on Queen Anne with big windows and a view of Elliott Bay. The kitchen had pale gray cabinets and a long island in white quartz, and one chipped corner on the island that Lily said gave the room character, and I said we should sand and polish. We hadn't sanded it. We probably never would. Lily was eating oatmeal with blueberries, the same brand of oats she'd eaten every weekday morning of her life, an industrial brand in a green canister that she insisted on buying even though I'd offered to import Scottish steel cut. She liked the green canister. The green canister stayed. I was reading news on my phone, a mug of coffee in the other hand. The cup the same plain white ceramic mug we'd both started using because neither of us cared which mug was whose. At 7:42, the first Reuters notification arrived. At 7:46, Wall Street Journal. At 7:50, Bloomberg. By 8:03, the story was on the front page of the New York Times. Marcus has been arrested, I said. I know, Lily said. I can hear my phone ringing since 3:45. She wasn't picking it up. The phone lay face down on the kitchen table, vibrating against the white quartz with a small annoying click every 9 seconds. I could time it to the second hand of the clock above the fridge. By 9 a.m., 120 missed calls. The phone had vibrated approximately 1,400 times. The battery had dropped from 96% to 41%. Lily had not glanced at it once. She had reread the same paragraph of an academic paper on shipping insurance reform 3 times during breakfast. I knew because she'd told me. She wasn't pretending to be calm. She was actually calm. That was the most disconcerting thing about her. When something arrived that would have devastated a normal person, she became more accurate, not less. I quietly poured her more coffee. She nodded. I ate half her oatmeal. She handed me the spoon. At noon, the bail hearings, I went. Not for Marcus, for the press. I sat in the 3rd row in a simple gray sweater, no tie, no signs. No one with me. Lily was at work. The journalists didn't recognize me. I had never been in the Hales' public life in this version of history. And the engagement photo galleries had no pictures of me. Victoria always managed not to publish them, which suited me. They brought Marcus into the courtroom in a jail uniform. Light gray, with King County's black patch on the right shoulder. 3 letters in a font that hadn't been updated since the 80s. In 48 hours since the arrest, he'd aged 10 years. Gray in his hair, which he'd kept dyed at a salon on Madison Park every 3 weeks for 20 years, was now all out, uneven mid-root, the kind of gray that makes a 60-year-old man suddenly look 74 bags under his eyes, the color of old bruises. Lips cracked white. Apparently the cell was dry, or he'd refused water from nerves, or both. His hands, which I had watched sign documents at 1,000 dinner tables in my previous life, were now cuffed in front of him, and his fingers, long, manicured, the fingers of a man who had never in his life carried his own grocery bag, trembled in small, irregular pulses. When he walked in, he scanned the room and saw me. In my previous life, Marcus Hale had looked at me 1,000 times. I remember each look, condescending at the engagement party, calculating at business lunches, tired when I asked stupid questions about family documents, and once at the very end of my previous life, the day I was fired from the post that had set me up. That look was, "Goodbye, boy, you were a good tool." Calmly forgiving, like a dog being put down after long service. Now, in the courtroom, his look was different. It was the look of a man who didn't understand what was happening. He looked at me, then at the judge, then back at me. He was looking in my face for something, maybe instructions on how to behave. I gave him nothing, just looked back. No anger, no triumph, just looking, the way you look at the weather report. The judge set bail at $7 million. Marcus's lawyer asked for $2 million. The prosecutor Mendoza asked for none. The judge settled on $5 million. Marcus couldn't post. All his assets had been frozen that morning before the arrest through an emergency SEC application. Friends weren't picking up the phone. Victoria wasn't picking up the phone because Victoria had her own new lawyer in her car at that moment, flown in from New York that morning. Caroline wasn't picking up the phone because Caroline was already in Lisbon, but I'll get to that. Alyssa wasn't picking up the phone because Alyssa wasn't picking up anyone's calls for 2 months now. She just sat at home in silence. I didn't know why, and I didn't care. Marcus was taken back to pretrial holding. In the corridor, as they led him past journalists, I was 3 meters away. He saw me a second time, lurched toward me. Security held him. He shouted across his guard's shoulder into the whole corridor. "It's you! You did this!" Journalists turned, cameras turned, microphones turned. I stayed put, didn't look away, didn't move. One reporter walked up to me. "Sir, do you know the accused?" "Yes," I said. "He's the former father of my former fiancé." "And why is he shouting at you?" I looked at Marcus, who was already being dragged toward a side door. Then at the reporter, then into the camera that was blinking red. I don't know. Possibly because for 6 years, through his fund Victoria Hale, he took $400 million from American families who donated to schools for orphan girls in Southeast Asia. And out of that money, 17 schools existed only on paper. Possibly because in 3 of them he and his wife personally posed at facades, rented for the day at $1,500 apiece. Maybe that's why he's shouting at me. I don't know. The microphones froze. The cameras blinked. "I didn't do anything," I added quietly. "I just waited, turned, walked off." The next day, that line was the headline in 3 papers. "I just waited. Alex Kane, former Hale family fiancé on the fall of Marcus Hale." Only they spelled my name Alex because one young reporter had misheard. A week later, it was too late to correct. Everyone else had already copied. In the press, I remained Alex Kane. That worked for me. It put distance between me and the real me. Lily watched it that evening on her laptop. "You said you wouldn't be in the news," she said. "I wasn't. Alex Kane was in the news. That person doesn't exist." She looked at me. "Adam?" "Yes?" "Come here." I sat next to her. She laid her head on my shoulder. This time 4 seconds. I counted. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For I just waited. I'd been waiting to say that for 10 years. I couldn't get it out loud. You said it. Thank you." I didn't say anything. Just sat with her head on my shoulder 40 seconds. Then she straightened up, as if she'd again forgotten she had a shoulder. I made another internal note. "Lily, you're closing in. You're not rushing." "I'm not rushing you," I warned Caroline in February, before Marcus's arrest, before it became obvious. The 3rd Tuesday of February, she came to my apartment. Unannounced. Lily was at work. I opened the door and she stood in the hallway in a wool coat, the color of caramel. An expensive beige scarf knotted in the way Hermes teaches you in their private styling sessions. Careful makeup, nothing excessive. A small handbag, a Birkin in the same caramel. 6 years old, but kept the way some people keep a Stradivarius. Caroline knew how to dress. That was her one area of expertise, and she was good at it. In my previous life, I had once watched her change outfits 4 times in the span of a single charity gala, each change taking less than 9 minutes. Each ensemble photographed by a different magazine the next morning. It was, in its way, a kind of competence. "Adam, may I come in?" I thought. Letting her in was a bad idea. Closing the door in her face was also a bad idea. I opened the door wider. She came in, took off her shoes in the entry, right move. She had registered the rack, left her coat on a hook, also right, walked to the living room and stood, not sitting, until I gestured. Then she sat, crossed her legs the way women trained at boarding schools in New England. Crossed their legs. Knees angled, ankles touched, weight balanced. I offered tea. She asked for water. I poured. "Well," she said, "you know Mom sent me here?" "Yes." "I thought you'd pretend you didn't." "Why would I pretend? I know." "Victoria sent you because she can't talk to me herself after Lily in the cafe. She's afraid I'll do the same thing to her. Mom needs to gauge how serious I am. So she sends you because you're the only one in the family nothing's hit yet. She wants you to scout out what to prepare for. That's the right strategy. She's not stupid. And you're not stupid. But I'm not stupid either. I know you're not stupid." Caroline sat on the couch, crossed her legs, sipped the water, set the glass on a coaster right. "Adam, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not threatening you. I'm not a scout. I came to talk." "About what?" "About the fact that you have some very specific map? I know I'm on the map somewhere. I want to know where." I looked at her. She was Alyssa's older sister by blood, and at the same time the family's most distinct member. She wasn't evil. She had one weakness: she knew when to step away from the smoke, not out of conscience, out of instinct. Cats feel earthquakes 2 minutes before the tremor and run. Caroline was that kind of cat. And now she'd come to ask, was it time to run, or still too early? I set a sheet of paper in front of her, not a drive, a paper sheet so she could carry it and show her mother if she chose. 3 paragraphs. 1. In 9 days, Theo Varens would be arrested. By the time of our conversation that had already happened, but Caroline had come earlier than the current formalities were complete. 2. In 41 days, Marcus Hale would be arrested. 3. In 55 days, Victoria Hale would lose control of Hale Capital because a new investor would try to save her with a deal, and the investor would cheat her. Caroline read for a minute, looked up. How do you know this? I know. You have a plan? I have a plan. You can leave me in it. I already left you in it. I'm warning you. You have 41 days to leave the country. Your husband will leave you a week before your father's arrest. As soon as the first wave of rumors starts, he won't want to be near the Hale name when the cameras roll. That's not my assessment. That's his character. I had lunch with him last year at Spinass, and he flatly told me he considered Marcus a burden for long-term political career. His own phrase. He doesn't love you, Caroline. He loved your last name and your father. You have 10 days to accept that. She set down the glass. Adam. Yes. Where do I go? Wherever you want. You have $72 million in a personal Zurich account that you've hidden from your husband since 2019? That'll last. I personally recommend Lisbon. You have a Portuguese second passport. You got it in 2022 through an investment program. Your husband doesn't know. Take that passport. Don't come back to the US for 5 years. By then, everyone who'll remember you will have forgotten. Those who haven't forgotten will be busy with something else. She looked at me a long time. Her eyes moved across my face the way a portrait painter's eyes move. Small, methodical sweeps, registering the things she had never bothered to register before. The line of my jaw. The fact that my hair was cut differently than the last time she'd seen me. The wedding band on my left hand, which was new to her, even though it was 8 months old now. The composure of a man who was not bluffing and who had nothing to gain by bluffing. I watched her do the math. Adam. Yes, you're not actually an angel. I know. You're being kind to me because I don't interest you. You've written me off. You're treating me like a refugee from a sinking ship. Not out of kindness. Out of calculation. If I leave, I have no reason to hurt you. If I stay, you sink me too because I'm part of the name. It's business. I nodded. It's business. Good. Thank you for being like this with me. At least you're honest. I'd rather have a man who tells me to leave for his own reasons than 3 men who beg me to stay for theirs. I've had the second kind. I know what it costs. She stood, put on the coat. At the door she stopped. And what happens to Alyssa? I don't know. I think she'll lose her board seat by end of March. That's all I know for sure. The rest, her choice. She has her own money. It won't save her from a drop in standard of living, but it won't let her starve. She won't leave. I know, she loves you. In her way. In an ugly way, I won't argue. But she loves. I know. You'll break her anyway. I'm not doing anything to her. I just stopped protecting her. I protected her from the consequences of her own actions for 4 years. That's done. It's not me breaking her. It's things breaking that I used to hold up in the air with my hands. Caroline nodded. Left. 6 days later, she flew from Seattle to Lisbon via London. Her husband learned of it once she was already in Lisbon. He sent her an angry email. She didn't open it. 2 weeks later, he started divorce proceedings, exactly as I'd predicted, 8 days before Marcus's arrest. Victoria learned of Caroline's departure the next day. That broke her more than anything else. She could lose a husband, a fortune, a reputation, but losing her older daughter on whom she'd bet the entire succession strategy was something she wasn't ready for. After that, Victoria didn't answer anyone's call for 38 hours. She sat in the big living room of their house in Medina, in one armchair, and looked at the garden. The Hales driver told me later that same Eduardo, whose wife cleaned at our new house on Queen Anne. 38 hours in the chair. No food, only tea which the housekeeper brought. She didn't drink the tea either. The housekeeper took it away again after 2 hours. On the 39th hour, Victoria called her lawyer in New York and asked him to find her an investor. Hale Capital was falling into a pit. She wasn't counting Marcus as lost yet. She was sure she'd pull him out on bail through her people in Washington. But Hale Capital, that was her life. That was what she'd been holding up for 30 years while Marcus posed. That was her company under her husband's name. Her lawyer found her an investor in 4 days. A young logistics company, Voss Logistics, registered in Singapore. Director, Mr. Vance Yates Voss. Capitalization, $600 million, ready to take a stabilizing stake in Hale Capital in exchange for 45% control. The lawyer noted the firm was young but with very quiet, very smart money, Victoria said. Set the meeting. The meeting was via Zoom. Victoria sat on one side, in her living room. On the other side sat Mr. Voss, face in shadow, abstract painting behind him. Voice low, slight accent that I overlaid via my Singapore colleague actress, whom I'd paid for 12 minutes of voiceover. She played Voss convincingly. I wrote her lines in real time through chat. Madame Hale, Voss said, we are prepared to enter Hale Capital. We have conditions. They are unfavorable to you personally, but they guarantee Hale Capital survives the next quarter. I'm listening, Victoria said. Voss listed them. 9 pages of fine print. Victoria listened. The lawyer, the same New Yorker, nodded in the corner of the screen. Document standard. No red flags. That was true. All the legal forms were impeccable. I drew them up with an actual Singapore lawyer. There was no trick in the text. The trick was in one line on page 7, paragraph 4, subsection D, which read, if Hale Capital's quarterly EBITDA falls below the threshold of $4 million for 2 consecutive quarters, Voss Logistics shall have the right to convert its stabilizing stake into a controlling stake, 51%, by paying the current market price of 51% of shares. The current market price shall be determined at the moment of conversion based on the NYSE quote on the day following the threshold breach. Victoria read that line, but she couldn't conceive of Hale Capital falling below $4 million EBITDA. In good years, 50 million per quarter. In normal ones, 20 to 30. To fall below 4, something catastrophic would have to happen. Marcus was arrested 11 days after signing. That was catastrophic. Hale Capital's first post-arrest quarter showed EBITDA of $1.2 million. The second, minus $3 million loss. By end of June, Voss Logistics automatically had the conversion right per the contract. I want to emphasize automatically. Victoria signed nothing at this stage. She tried to challenge it. Legally, the document was clean. She'd signed while reading the fine print. She just hadn't believed the fine print would ever fire. The first Saturday of July 2026, Victoria Hale walked into the Hale Capital office on the 22nd floor of the building, formerly known as Hale Tower, the same one I'd fallen from in my previous life. The day before, the Hale Tower metal sign over the entrance had been removed and a new one installed, Voss Tower. Victoria didn't know the sign had changed. She found out riding up in the elevator, saw the reflection in the polished door, and couldn't understand for a long time what was wrong. In the office, she was met by a Voss Logistics legal team. They walked her to her husband's office, which was now Voss's. They opened the door. No one was sitting in the chair where Marcus Hale had sat for 30 years. On the desk lay a folder with her name on it, a list of remaining assets she still had a right to, and a list of what she was losing. The list of losses was 8 times the length of the list of remaining items. Under the folder, a business card. The business card read, V. Yates, Voss, CEO, Voss Logistics Ltd, Singapore. Under the name fine print Victoria no longer read. On the very bottom edge, an almost invisible inscription in typographic italic, acquired through patience. In my previous life, Victoria Hale lived to 2042 and died at 81 in the family circle, in her own bed, in the same bedroom in Medina. In this life, she walked out of Voss Tower at 7:40 p.m., got into her own car, drove home, walked into the bedroom, closed the door, and stayed there for 4 months. She wasn't lying sick. She wasn't crying. She just sat. The housekeeper left food at the door. Victoria sometimes took it. She answered no one, received no one. That Victoria, that wasn't the Victoria I had known. That Victoria wouldn't have survived such silence. This one found something in it for herself. I didn't understand what, but I respected it. That was her achievement, digesting that her brain had lost to another brain. I even felt a little sorry for her. Not enough to change anything, but enough not to celebrate. Alyssa lost her chair at Hale Capital, slowly, millimeter by millimeter, week by week. In January, she still came to work. In February, only Tuesdays and Thursdays. In March, after her father's arrest, she stopped showing up. In April, she received an official letter from the board. Her position had been restructured, her seat vacated, severance of $5 million would be transferred within 30 days. 7 of 9 board members voted to dismiss her. The 2 abstentions were her former university classmates, the last 2 who still considered themselves her friends. By June, they stopped answering her messages. I tracked it through reports. Devon Park was sending me, I now paid him out of private consulting. He officially remained at Pemberton and Vale and passed me reports once a week. Alyssa lived alone, in her Belltown penthouse, bought for her by Marcus in 2022. Bought, like all her toys, in her name, so that her dad could at any time say he had given her, which was both a kindness and a control. She rarely left the penthouse, ordered food from the Vietnamese place around the corner, same soup every day. Pho ga, no spice, I knew, because Devon had checked through the delivery service. This was a place where I might have felt something, pity for instance, or satisfaction. I had neither. I was calm as morning coffee. Alyssa in a penthouse with soup that was her own life, the one she had built with her own hands. Me in this house on Queen Anne with Lily. That was my own life. The one I had built after the first one was destroyed by her hands. She and I had walked off on parallel paths. That's fine. Not every meeting becomes a catastrophe. sometimes just different apartments in the same city. Victoria called Lily in July, 11 days after the sign came off Hale Tower. By July, she had lost everything. Marcus was in county jail awaiting trial. The lawyers were dragging it out until September, billing $400 an hour from a firm called Kessler Patton that Victoria had been on the board of donors of for 9 years. They no longer returned her calls about anything other than billing. Caroline Lisbon not answering. Alyssa, Penthouse, not answering. Friends especially not answering. The wives of the men Marcus had known for 20 years had been the first to vanish, and they vanished in a coordinated way, like a flock of birds that has decided silently to leave a tree. The Riley wedding in Bellevue in June, to which Victoria had been invited in December, suddenly required no Hales on the seating chart. The Cascade Club, where she had played tennis every Wednesday since 2011, sent a polite letter that her membership was under administrative review. The board of the Seattle Symphony, where she had chaired the gala committee, asked her in a written note to step down for the duration of unfolding family circumstances. Victoria had spent 30 years building a network in Seattle, and that network had dissolved over 6 weeks so cleanly it was as if it had never existed. You know what I figured out about networks of money-influential people? They aren't networks. They're awake. While you're moving, it's behind you. You stop, and it lies on the floor. No one picks it up. Why would they? Lily was home when the call came. She was cutting an apple, a Honeycrisp, the one variety she always bought because she said the flesh was honest. I had asked her once what dishonest apple flesh would look like. She had said red delicious and refused to elaborate. I was on the balcony, on the phone with my lawyer about a portside warehouse acquisition in Tacoma that was running into a permitting snag. Lily came onto the balcony and showed me her screen. "Mom, put it on speaker," I said. "I know," she pressed it. "Put it on. Set the phone on the small table between us." "Lily." "Mom, darling, am I bothering you?" "You're bothering me." Pause. Victoria wasn't used to being interrupted right away. Before, never. In my previous life, Victoria Hale could speak for half an hour and the listener wouldn't get a sentence in. Now, Lily, 5 seconds, and Victoria was already off rhythm. "I understand. I'll be brief, Lily. I'm asking you. Just listen." "I'm listening." "Dad is in prison. Caroline has left. Alyssa won't answer. I'm alone, darling. I'm not calling you for money. I'm calling because I'm your mother. You're my stepmother, Lily. That's legally. That's not an insult. That's a fact. You're my stepmother. You became one when I was 2. You stayed that when I was 19. And you sent me to a clinic in Oregon for 6 weeks. You'll stay that now, and at the moment you're named co-defendant in your husband's case. That's your status. That's not my personal feeling. That's a document. Lily, I'm begging you. Mom, I'm recording this call. Silence. Lily, I've been recording every call from you since February. I have 11 recordings. On 2 of them, you say things that in court could be construed as admissions. I haven't given them to anyone. I'm holding them. If you call again, I give them out. If you come to Adam, I give them out. If you send me a lawyer, I give them out. That's not a threat. That's an instruction, so you understand. You have only one strategy left, which is silence. You'll manage it. You've stayed silent your whole life with me. Lily, daughter. I'm not a daughter. Please. Goodbye, Mom. Lily pressed end. Set the phone back on the table, picked up the apple, finished the half she was holding. 30 seconds later, she stood up, went to the kitchen, put on the kettle. I stayed on the balcony. Finished the call with the lawyer. Came inside. Lily was at the stove, her back to me. I went up behind her, didn't hug, laid a palm on her shoulder. 5 seconds. She didn't move. Lily. Yes. Are you okay? I don't know. It's okay not to know. I know. She turned. I looked at her face. She had no tears. None. Just very level. The way a person looks who's just passed an exam they prepared for over 12 years. They didn't cry at the exam, and they aren't going to cry now. But something inside had shifted. I could see it. Adam. Yes. Thank you for being here during that call. I live here. I'd have been here regardless. I know. Still, thank you. She turned back to the kettle. I went to the living room. It wasn't a moment for words. Alyssa found me in August. I'd been going on Tuesdays for 2 months to a small Thai restaurant, 3 blocks from our house. Family place, 10 tables, run by a woman from Chiang Mai named Nok, 60 years old, who cooked herself. 1 helper, her nephew, 28, named Boon, who had come from Bangkok in 2021 on a student visa and stayed. Her nephew's wife, Pim, washed dishes. The restaurant had no name on the front door. Only a hand-painted wooden sign with 2 Thai characters that I'd never learned the meaning of and never asked. I'd been told once by a regular it meant something like small house, but the regular was drunk, so I never took it as final. I ordered the same thing, tom kha gai with chicken and jasmine rice. Sat in the corner by the window, the chair against the wall, the only seat in the restaurant from which you could see both the entrance and the kitchen at once. Left after 40 minutes. Never spoke to anyone but knock. Same as last time. Same as last time. Thank you. Come back. It was my one place in the week where I wasn't Voss, wasn't Kane, wasn't husband, wasn't investor. Just a man with soup. Lily knew about it. She never asked to come. I think she understood some places only work when they're for one person. Alyssa learned of it through the same PI who used to work for her father and now worked for her. She walked in the second Tuesday in August at 7:40 p.m. I was finishing the soup. The door chimed. She walked in, took off her coat, hung it on a hook by the door, came to my table. May I? I nodded at the chair across from me. Knock looked over from the counter, recognized Alyssa, or didn't recognize her but sensed something was happening, and silently went to the kitchen. Alyssa sat. I looked at her. Over 8 months, she had changed. Not for the worse, that was the strange part. She was composed. No tears, no pallor. She wore a simple dark dress, no jewelry, hair pulled into a low knot. No makeup. This was not the Alyssa Hale of January's magazines. This was someone closer to a human being than I had ever seen her. Adam. Alyssa. I heard you married Lily 6 months ago. It's a public record. You could have read it then. I know. I didn't come to tell you I found out. I came to ask, was it revenge? I finished the soup, set down the spoon. No. Or do you love her? Those are two different questions. I'll answer both at once. No, it wasn't revenge. I needed Lily alive. If I hadn't come, Victoria would have buried her by the end of the year. I pulled her out. As for love, I don't know what that word means in my case. I have a lot of gratitude and a lot of patience toward her. If that's love, then love. If not, call it whatever you want. It doesn't change. Alyssa looked at her hands. On her right ring finger, a thin, pale band where the skin hadn't caught up. The ring she'd worn for 8 years. Taken off when the family died. The line hadn't evened out yet. Adam, can I tell you something? Tell me. I'm 28. I'm paying rent for the first time in my life. I'm cooking food for myself for the first time in my life. That sounds very stupid, I know. The first 3 weeks after Dad's arrest, I didn't eat anything because I didn't know how to order on Instacart. No one had ever done it through me before. I thought I'd starve to death in an $8 million apartment. I didn't. I learned Instacart. I learned to do laundry. I'm living alone now. No one had ever taught me to live alone. I had a nanny as a kid, a driver as a teenager, Dad's assistant in my 20s. You at 25. I was never alone. I didn't know what the word meant. I was silent. And you know what I learned? She raised her eyes to me. I learned that I'm very bad. Not evil. Not a villain. Just very bad. I don't know how to be a person. No one ever taught me. I thought I just had this kind of family. Everyone does it. Now I don't have a family, and I look at myself in the mirror in the mornings, and I understand what I am doing. Me. Not the family. It wasn't Mom doing this to me. It was me. Alyssa, wait. I'm almost done. I didn't come to apologize. An apology is something a person asks for when there's a chance of something after. I'm not asking for a chance. I don't have the right to. I came because I wanted to say this to your face once, that I saw you all 4 years and never really saw you. That I used you, not knowing I was doing it. That when I look at your wife now, at Lily, I understand Lily was right next to me for 24 years and I didn't see her either. It's not the family that broke me, it's me just blind. I don't know how to see. I don't know how to learn that. Maybe never? Maybe at 35 I'll be the same? I don't know. Silence. Noak had turned off the water in the kitchen. I heard a drop fall from the faucet into the sink. Alyssa stood. I'm leaving. Thursday. Wellington. New Zealand? Yes. Dad bought me an apartment there in 2023. I'd forgotten about it. It went through a blind trust. They haven't found it yet. I'll live there. I have enough money. I won't come back. There's nothing for me here. Don't come to say goodbye. Don't write. I won't write you either. I just wanted to say this. Thank you for listening. She put on her coat. Took a $20 bill out of the pocket and laid it next to my bill. For your soup. No need. Need. I'm paying for someone else's dinner from my own money for the first time in my life. It means a lot. Not to you. To me. She left. The door chimed. I stayed alone at the table. Noak came out of the kitchen, looked at me, then at the $20 bill, then at me again. Asked if everything was okay. I nodded. She took away the empty bowl, brought it to the kitchen. A minute later, she returned with a small bowl of mango sticky rice. Not ordered, free eat. Face is not happy, sweet helps. Thank you, Noak. Don't thank. Eat. I ate mango with sticky rice and thought about how I'd just lied. I'd told Alyssa I didn't know what the word love meant in my case. That wasn't quite true. I knew. I'd known since the library in November. I'd known since the apple on the balcony. I'd known since Lily said your eyebrows crooked and fixed it half a centimeter. I just hadn't told Lily yet, and I liked that I hadn't yet. It was something I was holding for later. Like a very expensive book you buy and set on the shelf to read when the time comes. I finished the mango. Put Alyssa's 20 toward Knox's side with my bill. Walked out, walked home. 20 minutes. Came in. Lily was reading on the sofa, in pajamas, glasses sliding down her nose. I sat next to her. Didn't speak. Where were you? Thai place. I thought you liked sitting alone on Tuesdays at the Thai place. I wasn't alone today. She looked up at me over the book. Who? Alyssa. She found you. Yes. And? She's leaving Thursday for New Zealand. She said what she wanted to say. Won't come back. Lily closed the book. Are you okay? I'm okay. I'll tell you later what she said, if you want. It was unexpected. Okay. Lily? Yes. Scoot over. She scooted. I lay down with my head on her lap, feet over the far end of the sofa. She put her hand in my hair. Didn't stroke. Just left it there. I closed my eyes. After that, don't remember. Apparently I fell asleep. Devon Park came to my office at Voss Tower on the Friday of the same week. I officially occupied an office on the 25th floor. Not Marcus's. We converted Marcus's into a conference room. I didn't sit there. I didn't care. But Lily said, don't sit in his chair. It's bad luck. I listened, took the floor above. On the wall, one painting, abstract, black and gray, hung because it reflected the window light well. Desk simple, lamp, angle poise, white. Devon knocked. I nodded. He walked in. In his hand, an envelope. Not a folder, not a file, but an old paper envelope. Gray, thick, with an elastic band that had been wrapped and unwrapped so many times the rubber had softened into a permanent loop. Set it on the desk. He was wearing a different sweater now, a navy blue cashmere, properly his size. The kind of sweater you buy after you've stopped counting bills at the grocery store. His shoes were new too. Cole Haan, black, the kind a junior associate buys when he gets his first stable paycheck. Hair cut clean. Glasses replaced wire frames now, not the cheap plastic ones from before. The improvements were small. Together they meant Devon Park was no longer the man who got dressed out of a donation box. He had a salary, an apartment, and a mother in remission. He had become someone. Adam. Devon. I'm not sure you're you, but I'm not sure you're not you either. If I'm wrong, sorry. If I'm not, thank you. I nodded toward the envelope. He opened it. Inside, cash. Hundreds carefully counted. Bundled in tens of thousands by paper bands the kind banks use. Without looking, I judged the stack. About $200,000. Mom was operated on in December. Rehab went well. She's home, sits, embroiders. In May, she danced at our family party. I work at Pemberton and Vale. Pay my rent. I even have savings now. I spent a year and a half looking for the sender. I found one lead. The intermediary was Singaporean. I couldn't push through them, but through a lawyer I know, I found out that in that same month, one man flew to Singapore from Seattle. An analyst named Adam Kane. That's all I have. I looked at the envelope, then at him, Devon. Yes, it wasn't me. Okay, then please take this money. I can't keep it. I set aside $3,000 a month, 18 months. I'm not reproaching you. I'm thanking you. Those are two different things. Devon, keep it. Buy your mother a house with a garden. She had a garden in Busan as a girl. She told you about it when you were 6. Under her pillow, she keeps a clipping from a Korean newspaper, a photo of her grandmother in that garden. The only photo she saved when she moved to the States in 1987. Buy her a house for the garden. That doesn't run more than $50,000 for a small place in Bothell. Put the rest on deposit in your mother's name. Don't touch it for 5 years. After 5 years, if I ask you for a favor, you decide whether to answer. If I don't ask, the money is yours for good. Devon looked at me. A long time. Adam, how do you know about the garden in Busan? I don't, I guessed. You didn't guess. Devon, I don't know. He nodded slowly, closed the envelope, tucked it back into his inside jacket pocket. Okay, I don't know if it's you or not. You say no, I hear you. But if you ever need a person who doesn't ask questions, who knows how to stay quiet, and who owes you his life, I'm that person. You know the address. I'm not going anywhere. I know, he stood. At the door he stopped. Adam. Yes. Mom asked me to pass one thing on to you if I ever met that man. She said, tell him I pray for him. And for his wife. I don't know who his wife is, but I pray for her too. I didn't answer right away, nodded after a second. He left. I sat in the office another hour. On the desk lay a report on a port acquisition in Auckland. I didn't open it, just looked out the window, at the water, at Elliott Bay, at the ferry coming over from Bainbridge Island, at a gull flying parallel to the ferry. Sometimes life returns what was put into it through hands you didn't expect, in a currency you didn't pay in. I gave Devon $200,000. He returned to me his mother's prayer for my wife. I don't believe in prayers, but I know Devon Park's mother had been a caregiver for 38 years, and every Saturday she drove to the Catholic Cathedral on Capitol Hill and lit a candle for every person she'd helped that week. In her ledger, maybe there wasn't a single dollar. But her candles over 38 years added up to some very large sum, in a currency I didn't trade in. I put the Auckland report in a drawer, closed the drawer, switched off the lamp, drove home. Lily was eating cold pizza out of a box in the kitchen. I sat next to her, took a slice. Quietly. Devon paid his debt back, she said. How did you know? You paid him 2 years ago for his mother. I found the transfer when I was going through your Singapore accounts in March. I didn't ask. Now you came in with the face of someone who just had something valuable returned to him. I guessed. You guessed. Adam, yes. You're not as bad a man as you sometimes try to sell yourself. I know that you know. Good, good. She finished her pizza. I finished my slice. The kitchen was quiet. The fridge hummed softly. Outside, Queen Anne settled into the kind of November night where the windows of the houses across the street looked like aquariums, small lit boxes of other people's evenings. A man 2 houses down was washing a dish in his sink. A woman 3 houses further on was holding a baby in the bay window, swaying. A dog in a yard somewhere barked once and stopped. None of them knew us. None of them ever would. It was the most peaceful arithmetic I had ever lived inside. The math of being known by exactly one person and not by anyone else who didn't matter. Lily pushed the pizza box across the counter toward the trash. Didn't get up. Just slid it. Missed. The box landed on the floor. I'll get it tomorrow, she said. Okay. Adam. Yes. Tomorrow is a good word. It is, November, a year after the cake mock-up. Seattle goes dark at 4. I came home at 4:30. In my hands, 2 cardboard boxes, and 1 jasmine pearl from the tea shop at Pike Place. The same brand I'd been drinking a year earlier, the night Alyssa sat at my door. I still bought it. Lily didn't know. She thought I just liked that variety. That was true. I just liked that variety. Things can have 2 reasons to exist, and over time the bad reason falls off, and the good one stays. In the second box, a folder with signed papers on Voss Logistics. Lily officially CFO as of Monday. No pseudonym. Under her own name, Lily Kane. She was sitting on the living room floor, not at a table, on the rug, laptop on her knees, cardigan, glasses sliding down, chestnut hair pulled up with a clip, next to her cold tea in a mug, running the quarterlies. I set down the boxes, brewed 2 cups, set one next to her, came up behind her, laid my chin on the top of her head, looked at her screen. She didn't turn, said without looking away, "You've got an error on line 47. I smiled, closed the lid of the laptop with my hand over hers. She finally turned, looked up at me from below. I made tea, I said. I see. Lily. Yes. I love you. She blinked. Once, not in surprise, deliberately, as if checking she'd heard correctly. I know, she said. I've known since the apple on the balcony in July. You didn't say. You didn't either. I know. I was waiting. I was waiting too. For what? Today. Why today? Because a year ago today, I was sitting in a coffee shop on 6th, writing 6 names on a napkin, and I crossed one out. And in its place, I wrote yours. I didn't know then why I'd written it. I didn't know what would happen. I thought it was about saving you. Now I know it wasn't about saving. It was about finally picking the right person. Not out of calculation. Just because you're you. She looked at me a long time, took off her glasses, set them on the rug beside her. Adam. Yes, me too. I know. You know? I knew from that apple. I just waited until you figured it out yourself. Bastard. I know. She stood up off the floor. I held her. Not long, about 20 seconds. She smelled of shampoo and that same jasmine tea I was hauling home by the half kilo once a month. I closed my eyes, didn't think about anything. In my previous life, by second 20 of hugging Alyssa, I was already thinking about work. In this one, at second 20 with Lily, I wasn't thinking about anything. That was the difference. She pulled back, picked up her mug, took a sip. Jasmine pearl. It is. You bring it home every month. I know. I thought you just liked the variety. I like the variety, she nodded. Finished the tea, set down the mug, walked to the window. Across the street, in a fifth-floor window, a light was on. Someone was moving behind a curtain. I didn't know who. It wasn't Alyssa. Alyssa was in Wellington. It wasn't Victoria. Victoria was in her bedroom in Medina, wordless, 4th month. It was just someone. A stranger's life. Not mine. Lily drew the curtain. Turned to me. Adam. Yes. Let's go to bed. It's 4:30. I know. Let's go to bed, I went. On the way to the bedroom, I turned off the living room light. The laptop stayed on the rug. The tea stayed on the side table. The Voss logistics papers stayed in their box. The jasmine pearl in the second box by the door. In my previous life, this November, this evening, this minute, I was at work. I was sitting in the office on the 42nd floor of Hale Tower, finishing the report that would kill me in 2 years. Alyssa, at that moment in my previous life, was sitting with Theo at a cafe in Belltown, and Theo was explaining to her how to put a shell company in my name through a lawyer in the Caymans. Marcus, at that moment in my previous life, was playing golf with the Oregon Congressman Caroline's husband. Victoria, at that moment in my previous life, was on a flight from Singapore to Seattle, coming back from that photographer Raja who'd shot her by the non-existent schools. In this life, this November, this evening, this minute, I was lying in bed with the woman who in my previous life had written me 4 words on the day of my death, and I hadn't opened them. In this life, I opened them. Lily was lying next to me, her back to me. I held her from behind. She put her hand over mine. After a minute, her breathing leveled. After 2, she was asleep. I lay there looking at the ceiling. No crack in the ceiling. On Capitol Hill, there had been a crack. I knew it by heart. Here, a smooth, even white ceiling. That was a good detail. Under my pillow lay my phone. On the phone, not one unread message. No voicemail I'd left unopened. No journalists waiting for comment. No lawyers with urgent papers. No Alyssa. No Victoria. No Marcus. Just one quiet sound, Lily breathing in her sleep. And that was all. Singapore, November, a year later. Marina Bay Sands, a conference hall on the 47th floor. Windows from floor to ceiling, and beyond the windows, Southeast Asia and one big body of water. Hall for 400. Everyone, port operators, logistics majors, hedge funds from Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, Dubai. The conference was called Asia-Pacific Logistics Summit. One day a year that decided tens of billions of dollars in deals. I sat in the 6th row by the aisle, in a plain dark jacket, no tie. No one knew who I was. Voss Logistics at this conference was represented by its CFO, not the CEO. The CEO, Mr. Vance Yates Voss, by tradition, didn't appear at public events, and for a year the press had joked that Voss existed only as a signature and a Singapore address. That worked for me. That worked for me very well. Voss Logistics CFO, Lily Kane, 30, actually 27 on the papers. It was a different date of birth. We changed it in March so that her previous life as Lily Hale was cleanly partitioned. Chestnut hair, shoulder length, straight, glasses in a thin metal frame, the same ones from the Lake Union Library 2 years earlier. Dark blue suit, simple, fitted. No jewelry except the wedding band on her left hand, thin, white gold, nothing extra. She took the stage at 10:20. On the screen behind her, an empty slide. Just a logo. 27 people in the hall pressed record on their phones. The lighting was harsh, conference standard, designed to be flattering for men in dark suits. Less flattering for anyone wearing makeup. Lily wore none. The harsh light landed on her face the way it landed on the screen. Flat, factual, no apologies. She did not adjust the microphone. The microphone was already at her height because she had checked it during the lunch break, sent a polite request through the conference staff, and an audio technician named Amin had spent 11 minutes positioning it for a person who turned out to be 5'6" in flats. She wore flats. She had chosen flats over heels 3 weeks earlier, when she decided that no part of her costume was going to be uncomfortable. I had watched her make that decision in the closet of our Queen Anne house, holding 2 pairs of shoes in front of the mirror and putting the heels back on the shelf without comment. She didn't say good morning, didn't say thank you for the invitation, didn't say it's a great honor for me. That was the first thing I noticed. In my previous life, 40% of conference talks started with those 3 phrases. Lily skipped them. Voss Logistics is acquiring a controlling stake in PT Pelindo 3, the Indonesian port operator centered in Surabaya. The transaction closes today. Price, $2,800,000,000 cash. This is the 2nd largest private port transaction in the history of Southeast Asia. We thank the government of Indonesia for prompt approval and the Indonesian colleagues present in this room. She stopped. 2 seconds of silence in the hall, then applause. Not polite, Real. A few people in the front row stood. I stood too. No one knew I was the husband of the speaker. No one knew I was the person on whose money this had been bought. I just stood and clapped like everyone else. Lily raised a hand. The hall sat. One technical note. I know there are 3 people in this room today who tried to buy the same asset last year and couldn't, because the price for them was too high, and for us it wasn't. I won't name names, but I want to say publicly, your valuation was more sound than ours. We overpaid by $120 million. I know that because I saw your sealed bids through an intermediary. I overpaid deliberately, not out of stupidity. Out of necessity, Polindo the 3 is connected to 3 other assets we need, and without it the chain wouldn't close. I'm saying this out loud so that this room knows Voss Logistics doesn't consider itself smarter than anyone. Voss Logistics considers itself more patient than anyone. The hall went quiet. That wasn't the kind of sentence you say from conference stages. Thank you, Lily said. I'm open to questions. I watched her from my 6th row. There was nothing on her face. No nervousness, no triumph. Just work. The first question came from a gray-haired Englishman from Maersk. I'd known him in my previous life. Charles Weston, head of Asia. He'd retire in 2029 to a quiet estate in Surrey, where he kept 3 Labradors and a wine cellar he'd been assembling since 1994. Now, in 2026, he stood healthy in an impeccable navy suit cut on Savile Row, a Patek Philippe on his left wrist, a microphone in his right hand. He took his time before speaking. Charles Weston was famous in Asian shipping circles for 2 things: never raising his voice and never asking a question he hadn't already worked out half the answer to. When he stood up at a conference, 3 CEOs and 4 CFOs in the front rows always sat up slightly straighter. He'd been asking pointed questions in this exact hall for 22 years. Mrs. Kane, Voss Logistics, bought Hale Tower in Seattle last quarter. This quarter, Polindo the 3rd. We, people who follow the market, have a very simple question. Where does the money come from? This is not an accusation. It's interest. Voss Logistics was unknown to anyone 2 years ago. Now you do $3 billion cash deals. No debt. No public investors. It's a phenomenon. Can you explain? Lily tilted her head slightly. I knew that tilt. Half a centimeter, no more. In other people, it would have been raised eyebrows. In her, a tilt. She let the silence sit for 2 seconds before answering. 2 seconds is a long time on a conference stage. In those 2 seconds, every phone in the hall stopped pretending it wasn't recording. Mr. Weston, a respectable question. My answer is short. My CEO earned money on FX arbitrage between 2020 and 2024. Exact sums, proprietary. Exact methods, proprietary. What I can say, he started with $3,000. That's not a public figure, but I'm naming it now because I like naming it. 4 years later, those 3,000 became 908 million. That's the initial capital of Voss Logistics. Beyond that, organic growth through acquisitions, no shadow investors, no political connections. This is first-generation money, Mr. Weston. I know your generation has trouble taking that on board. I apologize for the inconvenience. A single laugh rang out. Then another. Then applause. Charles Weston nodded, sat down. I knew he'd write me that evening, through an intermediary with a partnership proposal. I also knew Lily would decline it. The session ended at 11:40. Lily came off the stage. 7 people approached her. She spoke to each for 2 or 3 minutes. She didn't hand them off to assistants, received them personally. When the 7th left, she scanned the hall, found me in the 6th row, nodded, not waved, just nodded. I came over slowly, not rushing. At the exit of the hall, one last person intercepted her. The Indonesian transport minister, who'd flown in personally to sign the papers. They spoke 3 minutes. I waited in the corridor. The minister walked off to the elevator. Lily came to me. Adam. Lily. You came. I promised. She nodded. We walked to the elevator. In the elevator, when the doors closed, she leaned against the wall and shut her eyes. 5 seconds. Then opened them. I'm tired. I know. That was the longest sentence I've ever said in public. You said it perfectly. I rehearsed it 40 times in the mirror. I couldn't tell. That was the point of the rehearsals. We went. Down to the 4th floor, to a restaurant with an open terrace over the rooftop pool, sat in a corner. The terrace had glass railings and white linen umbrellas, and the kind of furniture that cost $400 per chair. The chairs heavy enough that a Singapore sea breeze couldn't lift them. At the next table, a German woman in a cream linen suit was tasting a wine flight with what appeared to be 3 Australian investors. 2 tables over, a single Japanese man in his 60s ate slowly through a plate of fruit and read the Nikkei on paper, an actual newspaper folded in thirds. Ordered water. Lily took off her glasses, wiped them with the corner of a napkin, put them back on. Adam? Yes. Remember, a year ago I told you, in safe deposit box 3, the key is under the lining of a brown bag. I remember. I threw out that box, and the bag, and the second copy of the archive, and the third. I have no insurance against the family anymore. I have no insurance against anyone. I am living for the first time in my life with no escape door. I'm not telling you so you'll do anything. I just want you to know. I looked at her. Outside it was noon. Sun, Singapore, turquoise water in the rooftop pool, warm air, gulls. Somewhere very far away. Seattle, November, 4 o'clock, going dark. Lily. Yes. I know. You know? I've been studying you for 18 months. I know when something changes in your posture. You stopped keeping the bag to the left of your chair at the cafe back in August. I noticed. I didn't say, I waited for you to say. Bastard. I know, she smirked. Same quarter smirk as in the library 2 years before. I recognized it. Good sign. The water came. Lily took a sip. Adam. Yes. I think we can leave. To where? Somewhere that doesn't need ports and deals. Maybe in a year, maybe in 2. Just leave. Voss will continue without us. We have management. We don't have to do this all our lives. I looked at her. Lily, I wasn't doing this to do it all my life. I was doing it to earn the right to do whatever I want, including nothing. You say so, we leave. Okay. She finished the water. Set the glass down. Adam, Dad's in prison until 2038. Mom's in the bedroom in Medina, 14th month. Caroline's in Lisbon, opened a small cafe. Answers no one. Alyssa's in Wellington, teaches English to immigrants' children. Hasn't traveled out once. I no longer have a family. I only just realized it now, on stage. Not from sadness, from the fact that I don't need to keep track of how they behave anymore. I am free of that for the first time in my life. I nodded. Me too. I know. She reached across the table. I put my hand on top. Just like that, for a minute. A gull landed on the railing of the terrace next to us. Looked at the bread that hadn't been brought yet. Flew off. Adam, yes. Let's go to Chiang Mai. Right now? In 2 weeks. After the closing. For how long? A month, just a month. No calls, no emails, just us and the same soup knock made in Seattle. I want to try it in Chiang Mai. I want to try the real one. Okay. The food came. We ate in silence. At the next table, they were discussing port tariffs in the Malacca Strait. At another, someone on a video call was shouting at an employee in Shanghai. At the far end of the terrace, a pianist was playing something slow. I didn't recognize the melody. I looked at Lily. She ate. Didn't look at me. Just ate soup with lemongrass and shiitake, the same as the one in the little restaurant 3 blocks from our house on Queen Anne. In my previous life, this November, this hour, this minute, I lay on the floor of my apartment on Capitol Hill. Alyssa had just filed for divorce. I couldn't get up off the floor for 3 hours. I looked at the crack in the ceiling and thought I was unworthy of life. In this life, this November, this hour, this minute, I was eating with my wife in Singapore. And in 2 weeks, she was going to take me to Chiang Mai to try the real Tom Kha. That was the difference. Not between lives, between me, Lily. Yes, thank you. For what? For choosing me. She looked up from the soup, looked at me. Adam, I didn't choose you. You sat across from me in the library and put down a flash drive. I was the only one who didn't run. That's not a choice. That's chance. It was a choice. Fine. It was a choice. Eat. I ate. After lunch, we walked back to the hotel on foot. Singapore. Noon. Warm wind. Palms. Lily held my arm. The street smelled of mango and exhaust and freshly cut grass from the median strip planters, a smell that doesn't exist anywhere in Seattle. We passed a small Indian temple on the corner of Cecil and Telok Air, and a woman in a saffron sari was placing fresh marigolds at the entrance. We passed a coffee shop where 2 old Chinese men were playing shangqi on a folding board, slapping pieces down hard, the way they'd been slapping pieces down for 60 years. We passed an HSBC branch where the air conditioning leaked out onto the street in a cold ribbon you walked through and back out of in 2 paces. We passed a Singaporean teenager on a skateboard, headphones in, oblivious to anyone older than him. We passed 3 British tourists arguing over a map their phone was already showing them. We passed nothing remarkable at all. It was the most ordinary walk of my life. At the corner, a courier passed us on an e-scooter, carrying a bouquet of white lilies wrapped in brown paper. Lily watched him go. The bouquet rocked on the back of the scooter. brown paper crinkling in the wind, the white blooms tilting like a small ridiculous lighthouse turning toward an audience it would never meet. The courier ran a red light. A taxi honked. The bouquet survived. The courier rounded the corner toward Telok Air Street and vanished. "Someone is getting a bouquet," she said. "Someone is. That's good. That's good." We walked on, 2 more blocks. At the hotel entrance, the doorman recognized Lily from the morning and held the door open without a word. We stepped into the cold of the lobby's air conditioning. Lily kept her hand on my arm all the way to the elevator. In the elevator, neither of us pressed the button for our floor. The doors closed on their own, then eventually opened.